Book 1, Bloodkin. Chapter 11. I ducked into my bathroom on the way up to the common room to wash my hands and smooth down my hair. Charlie caught me as I was coming out. So, what did you think of that? It was not what I expected. Billy seems nice. Charlie chuckled. Yeah, he would be. He's very enthusiastic about the education of Neathi bloods. Do all of you like humans so much? He grinned. Hardly. Most of the older folk find the outside exhausting. That's why they go back to the enclaves. That and to have children, of course. He winked at me. Come on, lunch is up. In the common room, the journeyman had laid out platters of cold roast meats, cheeses and sliced vegetables, along with pots of savoury jellies and loaves of bread, sliced and buttered for us to make sandwiches. We piled up our plates and sat, pouring glasses of freshly squeezed fruit juice. Even Talgith was quiet as he worked his way through 4 solid sandwiches before he got up to make 2 more from the leftovers. When we had finished eating, Adam came out from the kitchen with coffee. Stephen helped clear the plates away. I stood to help him, but he waved me away. Please, it's the least I can do. Oh, yeah. How are things going, anyway? I felt bad for the young guy, running around after us. Well, it's good. I mean, weird, but I'm getting used to it. His voice still retained the odd trace of an accent, and he lilted slightly, smiling at me shyly before hurrying back to the kitchen with an armful of plates. Journeyman, eh? Remarked Jimmy beside me. I remember the days. You've got to be gentle with them. They're like... He searched for an appropriate phrase. Like wild horses. They just need a little breaking in. He grinned wickedly. We finished our coffees on the couches by the fire, burning brightly even though it was the middle of the day, and still summer. My linen robe was cool and sort of breathed, so I was comfortable, even with the extra heating. When the journeyman had taken our mugs away, Thomas, who had assumed organisation of our group by virtue of his age and experience, stood and told us it was time to be getting back to the academy. Pleasantly full, we followed him down the stairs and out into the streets for the 10-minute walk back to class. Lalitha was quiet, walking beside me, looking apprehensive. Do you really think we'll be doing Hyalvin this afternoon? I asked her, using the proper Neathi pronunciation, feeling a bit silly. She laughed at me and then frowned. As long as we don't have to go over that racial heritage rubbish again. I glanced at her, surprised, and she shrugged. I got a lot of shit about it in Elisol. Well, for that and everything else. Jimmy overheard and bounced over, hugging around the shoulders. Oh, pop it! Forget those inbred bastards. You're here now, and we adore you because you're special. Yeah, I know. Look, I'm putting my happy face on. She wiggled free and grinned at him. See? That's my girl. He smiled and patted her on the head. Now, let's go do some Hyalvin. Up in our classroom, Billy was waiting for us. Small buckets of wood chips had been placed on 8 of the work tables, but he bade us sit down at our writing desks again, and I readied my pen and paper. Now, this is a special treat because it is your first day. Normally, you will spend several days learning about the theory behind the different kinds of Hyalvin manipulation before you try them. But seeing as this is probably something you have already encountered on your own, I will let you have a wee practice this afternoon. First, though, there are some basic things you must learn. He turned and wrote fire on the blackboard, followed by the Neathi word Hwaya. This is the Neathi word for when Hyalvin is used to begin a process of combustion. Can you pronounce that for me? Hwaya. Hwaya, we chorused, with a slight grumble on the and with a cadence from high to low on the last syllable. Very good. Now, I have heard Hyalvin being referred to as Neathi magic before, but this is technically incorrect. There is nothing supernatural about the use of Hyalvin. It is simply the manipulation of the physical world around us, using the power of our brains. More specifically, the frontal lobe area, which for humans only begins to fully develop in your late teenage years. Now, fire occurs when the atoms of an object begin to vibrate so much that they ignite. It is one of the easiest things to do with Hjaven, and why, perhaps, you may have inadvertently started fires in times of strong emotional stress. He peered around the room as a few of us nodded. He gave a wee chuckle. In my experience of human teenagers, this could happen with alarming frequency. So, to try and prevent any of you from burning down the city, I want you to experience how this process works when you're actively trying to do it. That way, you can learn to control your Hjaven if you happen to experience strong emotions from now on. Billy moved out from behind his desk, went to the closest marble bench, and beckoned us over to stand and watch. He grabbed a small handful of wood chips and arranged them in a neat pile on the bench top. Now, to channel your Hjaven, you must explore the makeup of the object you are trying to manipulate. Not with your eyes or your hands, but with your mind. You must feel the particles and gently stimulate them, moving them faster and faster until the pile of wood chips burst into flame. There! Fire! He blinked at the tiny fire, and it was covered with a dome of solid air, only visible when it choked the flames of oxygen, and smoke was caught beneath it. I had seen Charlie do this before, back in my father's study. Right, so there we are. Now, if anyone would like to move to their own benches to try, mentors, are you ready to douse the fires? Good. Now, I think I'll just open these windows. Billy paced down the side of the room facing the quad, opening the windows to let out the smoke, and Charlie and I went to find an unoccupied bench. He gathered a handful of wood chips and made a pile on the marble for me. You ready, kiddo? He encouraged. I gulped and nodded, remembering other times when I had started fires, not at all on purpose. You'll be fine. I've seen you do this before, remember? He grinned at me. And I'm here to put it out, so don't worry. I pulled up a stool to sit and concentrate, and I tried to do what Billy had said. I stared at the wood chips, willing them to catch a light, trying to imagine little flames bursting. The rest of the class was quiet, everyone else staring at their piles too, the mentors hovering protectively. I stared and stared, but nothing happened. No whiff of smoke, no nothing. Try closing your eyes and reaching for the wood chips with your mind, Billy told me quietly as he came up behind us. I did as I was told, but now I couldn't even see the pile. I could feel frustration welling inside me, as well as fear. What if I couldn't even do this? What if there had been some huge mistake, and what if I wasn't even the Blood at all? Feel the wood, Jazz. You can do this. Come on, I mentally kicked myself. You can do this. I leaned forward and rested my head on my hands and opened my eyes for a second to fix where the pile was in my mind. When I closed them again, I tried to imagine the chips at a microscopic level, an atomic level. I felt something uncurling in my head, reaching down towards them. I took a deep breath and imagined this something flowing into the pile. And then all of a sudden I could see the wood. I could see the tiny atoms moving oh so slowly. Now if I could just hurry them up, like if I could stick something in there and give them a stir. Almost imperceptibly at first, I could feel the movement, but I needed more agitation. Faster, I thought at the wood. Move faster. Damn it, it just needed a little bit more. Hey, you did it! Charlie cried, delighted, and I opened my eyes. The pile of wood chips was being licked by tiny flames, a little plume of smoke rising from the middle. Sweet little bit shit, Charlie! I looked around wildly. The rest of the Bloodkin was staring at me. Don't worry, Jazz. I'll put it out now. Charlie blinked at my little fire. Within seconds, the smoke was caught beneath the invisible dome, which Charlie left in place until the glowing from the wood chips died, then released it, the smoke curving towards the open window. Very good, Jesseth. Merbilly beamed across at me. Maybe you would like to explain in your own words how you achieved wire for the rest of the class? I looked around at my classmates. Talgoth and Aletha smiled at me, and Dunkel scratched his head. I caught Salah's eye and she looked, well, irritated, annoyed that I'd got it first. Well, okay. I started, trying to organise my thoughts. So, I closed my eyes and felt something in my head. I looked to Merbilly for guidance and he nodded. That something is your Hjavan, dear boy. Good, please go on. Okay, so I sort of felt into the wood chips and I directed my Hjavan in there to where the particles are and stuff. Then I gave them a bit of a stir around and... Does this make sense? Merbilly and the mentors nodded, but the rest of the Bloodkin looked blank. Yes, very good, Jesseth. It is a difficult thing to try and explain, but the idea of stirring is rather appropriate. Keep trying now. You'll find it gets easier with practice. Everyone turned back to their benches to keep trying. Charlie had brushed my pile of ash and unburned wood chips to the side of the bench and had readied a new pile. Try it again, Jazz. This time with your eyes open. I tried again, but it was much harder with open eyes. Things around me kept distracting my vision, but I reached for that something that was my Hjavan, sent it deep into the makeup of the wood chips, jiggling the atoms around, faster and faster until poof! With a small puff of smoke, they ignited. Charlie quickly sealed it off and I grinned at him. Fun, isn't it? He grinned back as he swept the pile away. Keep practicing. To the side, Jimmy let out a triumphant hoot as Aletha sparked her pile. Oh! She squeaked, surprised, as he stifled her fire. She looked at me in disbelief, her eyes shining. Oh, Jazz, I see. There's a... As she waved her hands around. There's a thing. Wonderful, wonderful. Good work, Aletha, called Merbilly, who was hovering over Samlock and James. We kept practicing, and I found I got quicker and quicker at zooming in on the wood and grabbing my Hjavan and forcing it in there. Dunkel let out a startled laugh when Richard grabbed his shoulder, and he opened his eyes to see his pile on fire. One by one, the others managed to set their wood chips alight. Gosh, exclaimed Stella as Emma congratulated her. That wasn't hard. Finally, Talgoth was the only one who hadn't managed the fire. Ah, this is bullshit! The damn things won't burn. I can't bloody... Whoa! His little pile erupted into flames. Ah, very good, Talgoth. Now, this time try and do it without all the swearing, Merbilly admonished him, but Talgoth grinned. Apologies, Merby, but I think I've got it now. Look! He grabbed another handful and grimaced in concentration, then laughed happily as it began to burn. Very good, boy, very good. Now, keep going for a bit and then we'll take a break and then try something harder. Off you go. We all practiced for another half an hour until our buckets of wood chips were empty and the piles of ash had grown. I tried to start my fires as quickly as I could, until it only took a few seconds of staring before the flames took hold. Then I tried using more of my Hjavan to ignite the whole pile at once, rather than have little flames spreading from the inside. I felt for the something in my head that was my Hjavan, trying to grab as much of it as possible before thrusting it into the wood. The whole pile exploded and sparks flew over the edge of the bench and onto the floor. Oh, no, hell, sorry! I yelled as I raced around the bench to stamp them out. Well, we try and keep our experiments on the benches, Jesseth, but you're doing very, very well. Merbilly came around to inspect the floor, popping tiny shields around the remaining sparks. You've got to get a feel for how much Hjavan to use. That may have been a tad too much for one small pile of wood chips. I ducked my head, embarrassed that the others would think I had been showing off, but he patted me on the shoulder. I think we've done enough for a break now. Please, sweep your ash into your buckets and I'll do the coffee. By the time our benches were clean, Mobilly was pouring coffee into mugs for us at the back of the room. We sipped our drinks and gave each other little pleased smiles. We had done it. We had all used Hjarvan on purpose. All felt the uncurling of that something that set us apart from all the other humans in the world. And by the looks on the others' faces, they were filled with the same sense of excitement and possibility and, relief that I was. Mobilly opened another cupboard, and as we finished our drinks and put our mugs on the table for the journeyman to clear, he handed each of us a candlestick and a fresh candle. Now, for the remainder of the afternoon, I want you to practice on something a little more difficult. The principle is the same with the candles, but the area you are trying to ignite, the wick, is much smaller and requires greater accuracy with your Hjarvan. So, try not to explode them, Jesseth. Salad did it. Was Mobilly teasing me? Although, you won't be using candles much in the hall. They are useful things to be able to light at will, without having to bother with matches or sparklights. He paused and looked around, suddenly serious. Now, I'm sure you will have gathered this already from your mentors, but Hjarvan is not something to be used frivolously. You Neathi Bloods have a gift, but it is nothing more than a quirk of your DNA. The ability to use Hjarvan is something that is certainly admired by human society, for it is useful and can be used to great effect to enrich the lives of others. However, humans are envious creatures by nature, and blatant flaunting of your powers is unwise, sometimes even dangerous. We, the staff here at the Academy, and your mentors, will endeavour to do to the best of our abilities to keep you safe. And the Neathi Quarter is a forgiving place. But please, do your best not to arouse jealousy amongst humans who are not as fortunate as you. Mobilly frowned as he finished his speech. Understood? Good. Right. Take your candles and off you go. At my bench, I placed the candle firmly in its holder and studied it for a bit. It was a fresh candle, beeswax, and the wick was made of finely braided cotton. The break had caused my concentration to drift as I settled, so I took a moment. With my eyes open, I felt into the wick, sensing the tiny particles. I gave them a nudge with my Hjarvan, and I felt them quicken briefly, and then slow. I needed more then. Remembering Mobilly's warning, I reached inside and gently drew out more. The microscopic view I had of the cotton made it feel huge in my mind. I wiggled the atoms and they started to speed up, but there was still no wire. I pushed more Hjarvan into it until finally the candle burst into life, then spluttered and went out. Damn it! What happened? Okay, Jazz. Think of Fiona and her hairs. With the wood chips, you could set them alight and they would burn by themselves, right? I nodded at Charlie. Well, with these candles, you've got to hold it for long enough for the flame to catch. Try again, but keep going until it can burn on its own. I tried again, stirring about in the wick until I saw it catch, and then I pressed harder, forcing the combustion to continue until... Oh, bollocks. I think I need a new candle. The wick had caught and burned down its entire length, turning the candle into a messy lump of wax. Wow, would you look at that? Mobilly came up beside us, holding out a fresh candle. You've got a lot of power, Jesseth, but you need to be more specific with your channeling. Feed the wire a little at a time. Rein yourself in. There's a good boy. Keep trying. On my third attempt, the candle caught and flared for a few seconds before going out. The next attempt lasted only slightly longer. I was trying very hard not to feel frustrated. The wood chips had been easy compared to this. I felt a headache beginning to growl between my ears, but I pushed it away. I finally lit the candle and I let it burn for a minute before Charlie blew it out. Very good. Now, try it again. For the next hour I practiced on the candle, but it was a bit hit and miss. Often I would get it to catch properly, so that one of us would have to blow it out, but it seemed that more and more frequently it would only spark and then die. Finally, Merbilly clapped his hands to get our attention. Very good work for a first day, my dears. Now, tomorrow we will start work on what you saw your mentors doing earlier, creating an oxygen-proof barrier, a form of shield to put your fires out. Most important, giving your natural propensity for fire, don't you think? So, tonight I want you to practice lighting candles, under the supervision of your mentor, of course. Min Eve will have a stash of them at the hall. So, do your practice and your readings, and we will look forward to another successful day tomorrow. Merbilly didn't wait for any replies before sweeping out of the classroom, his robes almost billowing behind him. It appeared we were dismissed for the day. A couple of journeymen, not as young as Alan or Stephen, by the looks and more confident air of them, came to the classroom and began to clear away our cups and clean our workbenches. Shush, dog. I gathered up my pen and journal and followed everyone else out of the classroom. The late afternoon sun was golden and still warm as we crossed the quad. Holy Lilbert, that was some day. Talgith caught up to me, grinning widely. I think we should go to the pub to celebrate. I massaged my temple. Oh God, I have the worst headache. Ugh. Talgith drew his brows together and thought for a second. Actually, so do I. Damn you, I hadn't even realised till then. Hey, I'll get Thomas to grab us some white and then we'll go anyway. Just for a couple of drinks. Until tea time anyway. He skipped away to Lalitha to tell her his plans. I shook my head, feeling altogether too weary for any kind of socialising, though the thought of smoking some white cheered me up a little. Charlie hugged me round the shoulders, noticing my discomfort. You did bloody well today, Jazz. I'm proud of you. Thanks. I feel like balls, though, and I managed to blow up a candle. He clapped me on the back. That's a good sign. He grinned at my dubious face. Honestly, it's easier to rein in too much power than struggle because you don't have enough. Come on. I think you deserve to celebrate a little. You really did great today. I wasn't really convinced, but I figured I could wiggle out of it when we stopped at the hall. No such luck, however. I had only just put my pen and book down in my room when Lalitha stuck her head round the door. Are you coming to the Thistle, Jazz? Talgith said you were. I groaned inwardly. If she had a headache like the rest of us, it didn't show in her face. Her eyes were sparkling and she seemed more animated than I'd ever seen her before. I would, but I have this headache and... Yeah, so do I. Jimmy said that's normal when you start using Chiaven, and some white and a couple of glasses of wine will sort us right out. There was no resistance I could offer in the face of her enthusiasm, and I sighed. So, who else is coming then? Oh, well, Sella and Mantley won't. They've started their homework already. She wrinkled her nose and giggled. And James isn't letting someone go, on account of his poor performance on Saturday night. She grinned wickedly. But the other boys are keen. Come on, it'll be fun. I don't know. But Lalitha strode into the room and grabbed the cuff of my robe, dragging me out into the hall. Charlie, she called over her shoulder, we're going to the pub. Oh? He poked his head round the door to his bedroom. Cool, I'll be right there. Down in the reception we waited for Charlie to join us. Your first day and you're already off to drown your sorrows? My. Minnie shook a finger at us in mock sadness. Jimmy waltzed over and planted a kiss on her cheek. We're celebrating. The Bloodkin used Calvin today. She laughed and patted his hair. Of course, my dears. Be back by 8. Dinner will be ready then. Jimmy saluted her as Charlie came down the stairs. Aye, aye, sir. He gave a cheeky grin. Is everyone here? Good. Let's go. We walked through the quarter whose shops were closing for the day. The twisting streets were full of gentle activity. Shutters were closed and signs were brought in. there were still people wandering about, enjoying the last of the afternoon's warmth. The doorman at the Shivering Thistle was leaning sleepily against the door frame, but he smiled pleasantly enough at us as we went in. I suppose it must have been obvious we were the Academy's new intake of Bloodkin, 5 young humans accompanied by their mentors. Inside, the sun angled through the amber glass windows, catching motes of dust and streams. A lone harper sat on the stage, plucking gently at an ornate instrument as tall as she was. The pretty, gentle music filtered through the tavern, mostly empty at this hour, though there were clumps of journeymen in the most comfortable booths. O'Malley was perched behind the bar, one eye on a newspaper he had spread out in front of him. He stood as he saw us enter. Back again so soon? Oh, must have been a hard day at the Academy. We're celebrating, Mr. O'Malley. The Bloodkin used their Harvin for the first time. Jimmy grinned at the landlord. And you've all got wicked headaches, no doubt. Don't worry, I see this every 2 years. He smiled as his eyes flicked over us. Ah, you lucky children. Harvin is such a wonderful gift, you know. The afternoon is still lovely. Why don't you head up to the roof and I'll send one of the journeymen up with a celebratory bottle of something. Everyone else headed for the stairs to the roof garden, but I lingered for a second. I looked up above the bar to see if anyone was in Anna's private lounge, but to my surprise, the top of the bar extended straight up to the roof. Where was the balcony that we had looked over the other night? There must have been some sort of carving on the wood panelling to make it transparent from the other side, but opaque from this. Without thinking, I gave the wood a nudge with my carving. It certainly felt different from the wood chips we had practiced on in class, almost as if... Kyosh, your Bloodkin looks like he's about to set my tavern on fire, O'Malley warned, and Charlie turned back and cuffed me lightly round the head, breaking my concentration. Don't go probing stuff until you know what you can do, Jazz. Oh, shit, I shook my head. I'm so sorry, Mr. O'Malley. I didn't mean... I was just wondering about the... Yes, it's been altered with Yarvin. You weren't really trying to set it on fire, were you? Of course not, I stammered, horrified. I was just... looking. Well, looking can get you into trouble, muttered the little landlord, and he turned back to his paper. I hung my head, shamefaced, as Charlie glanced at the entrance to the staircase that led to the private lounge, but the guard shook his head. Lumman is conducting business, he told us tersely, and moved to block the way. Charlie shrugged and we went to follow the others. Did you tell Anna about what those guards said? I asked him as we climbed the main stairs. The ones by that bridge? No, I didn't really have a chance. And I'm sure she knows about most things that are happening in the city. He shook his head. I didn't want to worry her. How anything could worry the head of La Vasalian was beyond me, but for guards to be muttering about trouble in Lille all the way in the jail's head district, it must be reasonably serious, mustn't it? Upstairs in the garden, we joined the others, who had made themselves comfortable in chairs and couches around a large circular table. The sun was leaning down to the west, and the city was lit brilliantly in gold. Up on the hills, windows twinkled as they reflected the light. We could see patches of the lake, still and mirroring the few fluffy clouds above, slowly turning brilliant pink and orange. A waitress arrived with 2 bottles of a jail's head Sauvignon Blanc and a platter of glasses that she placed on the table. Hello, sweetheart. Enjoying the afternoon? Talgith grinned at her. Oh, yes, thank you, sir. Is there anything else you need? Good then. And she skittered away. Smooth, muttered Lilitha, but Talgith looked puzzled. She looked terrified. I'm not that hideous, am I? What did I say? Lilitha sniggled, but Thomas smiled at him. She was very young, couldn't you tell? And humans are scary. Until you get to know them, of course. But she looked like she thought I was about to eat her or something. Thomas shrugged. We are taught to be careful. And you do have a propensity for violence. I do not! Exclaimed Talgith hotly. Well, not you specifically, but we study your wars in the enclaves. Journeymen who return for their training like to terrorize the young folk with scary stories about humans. Telga sat back in his chair and folded his arms, clearly not mollified. So, how do I convince you to sleep with me then? Thomas gasped as Dunkel and Donnock laughed. Latha rolled her eyes and ignored him. So, they were mostly all journeymen downstairs, weren't they? She asked Thomas. They all look very young. Yes, I'd say most of them are. Murray O'Malley loves all things Niathi. He considers it his duty to make them feel at home out here. He even gets musicians to play our traditional songs, to remind them of home. Huh, well, that's good of him. I suppose he's Niathi blood then. Thomas laughed. Funnily enough, no. And I think he desperately wishes he was, though. I remember when he bought this place. He would have been, not much older than you are now. He comes from an old little family with lots of money, and he grew up with journeyman nannies, I believe. Dunkel had taken off his spectacles to rub at the bridge of his nose, and as Thomas stopped for breath, he broke in. God, will we always get headaches like this after class? Richard, may I please have some white? My head is killing me. Richard produced his pipe, an ornate brass device with a cherry wood bowl that he packed from his white velvet bag. He sparked it and handed it to Dunkel. No, you'll get used to your Harvard in a few weeks. A few weeks? Dunkel squeaked. It'll get better, I promise. If you practice properly, the headaches will lessen as you learn how to concentrate properly. And the meditation will help too, Telgith groaned. No, really, meditation is essential, you'll see. They know what they're doing up at the academy. I gratefully accepted the pipe as it was passed around, and almost immediately the throbbing in my head lessened, then drifted away altogether. Thomas repacked the pipe when it reached him, but Telgith gestured at it. Ooh, can I light it? The mentors all laughed, and Thomas groaned in mock desperation, cradling his head in his arms on the table. Ugh, there's always one. Hell, Telgith, you will be the end of me, I swear. After you, I'm going back to the Enclave for some peace. You are my last Bloodkin, I swear. Everyone laughed, and Telgith threw up his hands. In the rich air of the late afternoon, we were all flushed full of our day's successes, both relieved and excited. There was no way then that we could have known what was going to happen to us in the next year. No way we could have known quite how prophetic Thomas's words would prove to be. End of chapter 11! Sweat bucks, boys!